Good morning, and welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Richmond. My name is Elisa O'Brien, and I serve on our Board of Trustees. Our church was begun in 1833 as a liberal Christian community. We now are a community of many faith journeys and beliefs united in a single covenant of care. Through the years, we have struggled and often succeeded in the mission to seek personal wisdom, build beloved community, and serve the purpose of justice in the Richmond area. If you are a visitor here today, we are glad you found us. We welcome you and thank you for spending time with us, and we hope you will return again soon. Every service is a little different, our ministers unique, and our music ever-changing. The best way to discover who we are is to spend time with us over several Sunday services. We encourage everyone to join 5 to 10 minutes early for pre-service announcements. This is a good way to stay informed about things that are important in our church community.
Good morning, and welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church. I am the Reverend Sherman Logan, and it is my honor and privilege to serve this congregation as one of its ministers. I'd like to welcome each and every one of you who are watching us from wherever you are to our worship service today. Friends, families of Afghan refugees are currently being resettled throughout the country and locally. They face many potential challenges in the resettlement process, but these challenges can be much easily to face with the help of a supportive community like First UU. We are working with a global humanitarian aid and relief organization, International Rescue Committee, IRC, and we are looking for volunteers interested in sponsoring a family for resettlement into our community. So if you are interested in sponsoring a family or other volunteer opportunities, please reach out to our social justice intern, Bridget Taylor, and our congregational administrator, Margaret Rush. Our UU values call on each of us to be in solidarity with our siblings displaced by violence, political upheaval, extreme poverty, and injustice. And our congregation has a long history of coming to the aid to our siblings who are in need. So friends, won't you please consider volunteering to sponsor a family? Thank you. As we enter into this time of worship, hear the words from Patricia Sheldon. Here's where we gather in the presence of the sacred. Here's where we gather to experience the holy. Here's where together we face the unanswerable questions and the knowledge that not knowing is as sublime as it is frustrating. Here's where we unite in the midst of life and all of the glories and suffering it can hold, knowing both are ever present. Here is where we ask, think, discuss, ponder, and offer what might not be welcome or even accepted somewhere else. Here's where, if we allow it, we are deeply moved. Here's where we encounter each other in deep and powerful ways that surprise us, yet without which we will not survive. Here we gather to worship, to experience something happen, perhaps something different from each of us according to our belief, something unnamed, uncategorized, unusual, yet absolutely necessary. Here we are so gathered virtually and in person, our minds, our hearts, and our souls. And so our worship begins.
Writing this morning is by Andrew Pakula. There are miles behind you and many more ahead. As you journey on toward wholeness, may all that is good and true guide your way. May the joy of love lighten every step, and the miracle that is life be ever in your sight. Change by Wendy Vidluck. Change is the new, improved word for God, lovely enough to raise a song or implicate a sea of wrongs, mighty enough, like other gods, to shelter, bring together, and estrange us. Please, God, we seem to say, change us.
Now let us center ourselves, prepare our hearts and spirits as we enter into this time of silent meditation. Spirit of life, sources who is known to us by many, by so many names, and even beyond naming. We come to you this morning with grateful hearts, thankful for the opportunity to be together in worship. During this time, may we be able to put aside the concerns of our daily lives, let go of all the demands that crowd upon us, and simply be present at this moment. We know that all life is a gift, and we give thanks for our lives. We give thanks for this place, this community. We thank you for truly understanding each of us as you are able to meet us at the place of our deepest needs. We left the needs of our hearts to you and take the time to breathe. Reflecting on how each life-giving breath is a powerful sign of your life-giving purpose inherent in each one of us and all people. We ask now that our light shine through our time of darkness, bring us hope and encouragement as we face the many challenges of life, open our hearts for the journey, our eyes for the light, our spirit for the peace which you would bring. Bless each one of us here today, refresh our spirits, and transform our whole being until we reflect your love and compassion through and through. We ask that you meet our needs this morning and the assurance that our prayers will be answered, knowing that what they mean to be answered will look and feel different to each one of us. We ask these things in the name of all that is called holy. May this be so. Amen. Ashe.
The Share the Plate recipient for this month is C2 Adopt. C2 Adopt has provided placement and support services for those interested in adoption since 1989. They work with open infant placements and older children waiting in foster care and provide a range of programs and support to birth parents, adoptees, and adoptive families throughout their lifetime. C2 Adopt has been instrumental in getting adoption records open to adoptees, parents, and siblings. It recognizes and it serves the special needs of international and interracial adoptions, and also led the way in approving open adoptions and adoptions by LGBTQ parents. While C2 Adopt is headquartered in Richmond, they serve all of Virginia, but especially the Charlottesville, Richmond, and Tidewater areas. Please give generously to help this essential work. And while you're thinking about giving, I have an update about a new way to give. Give Plus is now Vanco Mobile. Give Plus will no longer be active starting February 1st, so you have about a week to transition to the Vanco mobile app. You can easily give to First UU using your smartphone. You can visit your favorite app store, download the Vanco mobile app, and follow the prompts. It will first ask you to search for your organization, and please note there are several First UU churches out there, so please make sure you select the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Richmond and look for our logo and our Richmond address. This is a new app, so there may be some updates and changes coming soon. And you can always donate via our website or by mailing a check. If you have questions, please email our amazing bookkeeper, Amanda, at bookkeeper@richmonduu.org. Our offering for today, supporting C2 Adopt, will now be collected and gratefully received.
Our reading, Quicken in Me a Sense of Humor, is by Ted Loder. O God of gifts, quicken in me a sense of humor, bright enough to help me find my way in these tarnished times, fruitful enough to be made the wine of hope, to warm the hearts of those I live with. Make me glad to be one of a kind, yet with a kind. Called not to be more like others, but more of myself, a gorilla of grace. That in daring to be authentic, I may become more of humankind. So, O God of gift, liberate me to share without apology or arrogance the only gifts that I have, but the gift I am. As our congregation began preparing for its ministry transition, it dawned on me that after 13 years as First UU, of serving First UU as its business manager, assistant minister, executive minister, and now the acting senior minister, many of you may not know my story. Now, through the years, I'm sure that some of you have heard my spiritual journey from being a Baptist to becoming a UU. And many of you were here when I started my quest to become a UU minister. But do you really know me? I know there are folks who have joined the church during the pandemic that have never met me in person. You all have seen me on YouTube and Zoom, but I know y'all don't know me. So friends, allow me to reintroduce myself to some and introduce myself to others. I am the Reverend Sherman Z. Logan, Jr., and here is my story. I was born and raised right here in Richmond. My sister, Reverend D.K. of New Beginning fame, and I grew up in a loving middle-class family. I have fond memories of my home being a warm and welcoming place for family members who would make a point to stop by while traveling up and down Interstate 95. And the neighborhood kids who would play with my sister and I in our backyard all day long and end up staying for dinner. It was at my home where I learned the concept of neighborly love and Christian hospitality. My parents, both graduates of Virginia State University, were excellent role models for my sister and me. My mother taught in elementary schools for over 40 years for Chesterfield County and the Richmond Public School System, and she was one of the first African-American teachers to integrate Chesterfield County schools. And my father was also a trailblazer. He was one of the first African-American retail store managers in downtown Richmond. They taught us the virtue of hard work, having a good education, loving our neighbors, and the importance of faith in our lives. Now, my parents were devout Baptists, and from my earliest memories, we were actively involved in the church. And friends, you know, for the Logans, going to church was an all-day affair. We would leave home sometime around 8:30 in the morning for Sunday school, stay through the 11 o'clock worship service, break for supper, return for the 4 o'clock service, and sometimes we would not return home until 7 or 8. So when I started to attend First UU, I learned that services last for just an hour, and the sermons were at most 20 minutes long. I didn't know how to act, because in my Baptist church, if the preacher didn't preach for an hour, the folks would start complaining that the minister wasn't saying anything. Talk about culture shock. And friends, let me tell you, we didn't just go to church to be pew spectators. Our parents insisted that my sister and I become active in ministries. So we attended Sunday schools, joined the Girls and Boy Scouts, sang in the children and youth choir. Now, I don't know what happened to my singing talents, but there's a reason why my sister wouldn't let me join New Beginning. So you see, it was my heavy involvement in the church that informed my faith and influenced my ecclesiastical thoughts. But despite, at an early age, my deep indoctrination in the Baptist church, I found myself at odds with what I understood as the church teaching and what I was learning in Sunday school. And you know, those hour-long sermons that I heard didn't make a whole lot of sense. So I would often leave the church dazed and confused. I had a lot of questions when I left the worship services, but I was told by the grown-up, you should not question God. But, you know, I was a precocious, inquisitive child whose favorite pastime was reading the World Book Encyclopedia. Now, I know some of you here know about the World Book Encyclopedia, but for some of you young folks, that was Google back in my day. And what I was learning about Christianity from reading the encyclopedia didn't quite jive with what the stuff I was being taught in Sunday school. Now, how can a snake tell a woman to eat an apple? And how could one man be of 3 people? I never understood that. So I would ask my mother why the things I read about Jesus and church in the encyclopedia was different from the things I learned about in Sunday school classes. Bless her heart, she would try to explain to me in the best way her theology would allow, but her explanation always rang hollow with me and never satisfied my curiosity. Now, my parents appreciated my sister and my thirst for knowledge and encouraged us to be independent thinkers. But when it came to questioning our religious belief, the accuracy of the Bible, or even the existence of God, my mother would not hear such nonsense. And being a nerdy child that I was, I would repeatedly ask my mother questions, hoping to find answers that made sense to me. Then, after a few times of my persistent interrogation, one day, in an exasperated voice, she finally exclaimed, "Boy, you better stop reading those encyclopedias and start reading your Bible." So fast forward a few years. I graduated from the original Maggie Walker High School and attended the University of Virginia. And my transitioning from high school to college was not unlike other teenagers leaving home for the first time, adjusting to class schedules, learning to live independently with strangers, and making life choices without my parental influences. However, while at UVA, I faced challenges that helped me prepare for the many difficulties that I would eventually encounter in my life. And my college years were also void of any religious activity. You see, for the first time in my life, I was free to choose whether or not to attend church, and I chose the latter. Religion and spirituality were not an essential part of my life at that time. Now, of course, my parents, they weren't too happy about my choice, but they respected my decision, and I guess they prayed that one day I would come to my senses and return to church. And little that they knew at that time that both of their children would eventually become ministers. So I guess God does answer prayers. So I graduated from UVA, embarked on a business career, and I would eventually find myself wandering for many years in what I would describe as my spiritual wilderness. You know, friends, during that time, I endured a painful divorce, had numerous unhealthy relationships, experienced professional setbacks, bouts of unemployment, and financial hardships. So it was during my time in the wilderness, I began to seek a greater purpose for my life. I wanted a new lease on my life. It was time to find Jesus again. And like the prodigal son, I returned to the church of my youth, and did I come back? You might say I jumped in the deep end with both feet, with much zeal and enthusiasm. I became active in the church again. I was filled with the Holy Ghost power. And I joined as many ministries and organizations that I could, helped founded a church credit union, and became a deacon. And eventually I was hired by the senior pastor to join the church staff as its chief finance and administration guy. Now, while working at the church, I wondered why I was there. Did God have greater plans for me? And after spending several years in the spiritual wilderness, I was given an opportunity for a fresh start. And I started to seek the answers to my theological questions that I could not find in my church. So I enrolled in the Samuel DeWitt Proctor School of Theology at Virginia Union University. But you want to hear something funny? I didn't go to seminary to become a minister. As a matter of fact, I told the dean at the seminary when he asked why I wanted to come to seminary, you know what I told him? I didn't want to be a preacher. Now, you all have heard that God had works in mysterious ways. So when I was in seminary, I began to wonder if I was called to the ministry. So I thought to myself, if God was calling me, God must have reached the wrong number, because there was no way I was going to be a preacher. So I reflected back to my time in the wilderness when my life was floundering, and I realized that I was wrestling, struggling with my sense of call. But I kept telling myself, there is no way God is calling me to be a minister. But I kept feeling this sensation, a strong sense of call, and then it hit me like a ton of bricks. Something was happening in my life that was beyond my comprehension, and there was a much larger force drawing me into ministry. I could no longer run. And when I finally came to grips with what was happening, I succumbed to that force and acknowledged my call to ministry. And 16 years ago, I was ordained as a Baptist minister. So after serving on my church staff for 8 years as an associate minister, I began to realize that my progressive Christian theology, my views about the Trinity, gender equality, sexuality, and sin didn't mesh with the teaching of the Black Baptist Church, so I would probably never be called to serve as a senior pastor. Now, eventually, as circumstance would have it, I would resign my position and my membership of that church that I grew up in, the church that my ancestors helped started. And leaving my church was a heart-wrenching but necessary decision. Now, during this transition period, I was made aware that First UU was searching for a church business manager. So I applied for the position. And it was during my interview with Reverend Jean when she graciously extended me the opportunity to serve in a pastoral role in addition to my business manager role. She offered me the great privilege of starting and leading the Christian Fellowship Group, to lead Vespers, and to preach on many occasions. I also had opportunity to preach at UU churches across the state and served as summer minister at the Williamsburg congregation. The opportunity to search and preach at different UU congregations provided a valuable learning experience that shaped my UU faith. And thinking back to when I was first hired as First UU church business manager, I never imagined in my wildest dreams that the building that I would drive by many times on my way to Dogwood Dale, this building that we're in right now, that some 50 years later, I would become a member and minister of this church. And back those days, when I would drive by the church, I didn't know this building was a church. Looked like a library to me. So First UU became my spiritual home, a place despite its flaws and imperfection. It was a diverse religious community, well, not quite that diverse, but we're working on it, that I was longing to join. It's a place where folks are encouraged to discover their own theology and follow their spiritual paths. And these are the things I've always wanted in the faith community, but never knew such places existed. And since I joined the Unitarian Universalist faith community, I have become one of the leaders of our association, serving on the board of trustees and various national and regional committees. Not bad for a former Baptist minister. So after being at First UU for a few years, absorbing as much knowledge about the faith that I could, I decided to become a UU minister. However, as I embarked on my journey towards UU ministry, I didn't take lightly my decision to leave the Baptist faith. Instead, it required prayerful thought and thorough deliberation. And as I started to pursue UU ministry, I didn't want to discard my Christian heritage nor give up my Baptist ordination. You see, that was the heritage that provided the foundation of my faith. And while I often disagreed with some of the teachings of the Christian church, I believe that Jesus' teaching of loving our neighbors, caring for the less fortunate, having radical hope, justice for all, and that all souls have unique and inherent worth and dignity, transcends all faith traditions. This universal love that Jesus taught is common thread that connect humanity. And it was the teachings of Jesus, and this is important now, this is the teaching of Jesus, not Christianity, that helped shape my ministry. The teaching of Jesus, not Christianity. So after years of studying and preparing for the ministry, the folks in charge of credentialing UU ministers, the Ministerial Fellowship Committee, granted me full preliminary fellowship in 2014 and full fellowship in 2019. So I finally become a full-fledged UU minister. Now, being a UU of color, especially a minister of color, it's not without its challenges. And at times, I've gotten impatient with the continued lack of racial diversity in our congregation. And there have been times where I question, why have I stayed in this predominantly white community, faith community? And friends, believe me, there has been times during the 13 years since that I've served this congregation, I have been made to feel unwanted, uncomfortable, and unsettled. However, my ministry is my calling. I was called to do deep, soul-stirring, transformational work. And my ministry has required commitment, purposeful intentionality, and courage. And I stayed in this faith because of the hard work of building the beloved community still must be done. And I will and I must continue to do this hard work, not for my benefit, but for the generations to come. So my friends, I invite all of you to serve with me in the spirit of mutuality as partners. Let us work together as we strive to discover, develop, utilize, and support each other's gifts, and as responsible stewards, participate in the ongoing creative activity in our beloved community. We are interdependent, and we need each other to survive. We will be ministers and partners and produce an overflow of energy greater than the sum of all its parts. And as we start this new journey together, as we begin to write a new chapter in the story history of the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Virginia, we will be navigating through many obstacles that we're faced during the transition. Now, I know that there will be a lot of questions, there will be some anxiety. And if we can keep it real this morning, I know there are some of you out there are wondering, what kind of senior minister was Reverend Sherman B? Now, some of you have known me from day one when I walked through the doors as a church business manager, and you knew me as the executive minister. But you aren't quite too sure what to think of me as your senior minister. And I also know there are some folks in our congregation who might be just a wee bit uncomfortable with me at the helm, but you know, that's all right. You may not be entirely sure if I'm the one. But friends, don't worry. We have a few months to figure things out. So I know change will be hard, but together, my beloved, we will make it, and we'll be in this together. Creating a beloved community where all souls are welcome and included, where both the head and heart is in the presence, and the spirit is free to flow and can be interpreted in many ways. So my friends, you have heard my story, but remember, there will be more chapters to be written, and hopefully we will write them together. And for those of you who know me, I hope you learned something new about me this morning. And for those of you who still don't know me, I hope you've gotten to know me a little bit better. And you feel that you don't know me by now, let's spend the next few months getting to know each other. Who knows? We might be pleasantly surprised. May this be so. Amen. Ashe.
Oh, just like the river I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change is gonna come. Oh, yes it will. It's been too hard living that I'm afraid to die. I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change is gonna come. Oh, yes it will. Then I go to the movies, or whenever I go downtown. Oh, somebody keeps telling me don't be hanging around. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change is gonna come. Oh, yes it will. Then I go to my brother and I said, brother, help me please. But he winds up knocking me back down on my knees. And, oh, there have been times that I thought I wouldn't last for as long, no. But now I think I'm able to carry on. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change is gonna come. Oh, yes it will.
Our chalice extinguishing words are called Move Through the World in Love by Maggie Lovins. We extinguish this flame, but not its meaning and mission in our hearts. Our time together has come to an end. Go in peace, be of service to one another, and may you move through the world in love for all of your days.
Friends, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I don't know about you, but it felt real good to be back in the Great Hall. So I want to thank Dave, the wonderful singers, Reggie Henderson. You blessed me, my brother. Thank you so much. Jamie, Barre, Paul in the sound booth, and my wonderful worship associate, our fabulous intern, Lauren Leibwood, and Elisa O'Brien. Thank you all so much for making this worship experience a successful one. So before I give the benediction, I spoke in my sermon about transitioning. And so immediately after the service, well, at 12 noon, joined the board of directors and the leadership development committee for update on the ministerial transition process. You should have received the Zoom link in the First News Weekly today or sometime over the weekend. Christine Purcell, our transition program manager from the UUA, will join us to outline the search process for an internal candidate. And the Leadership Development Committee will introduce the information about the nominating process for the First UU Search Committee. And of course, the board will be there to answer any questions about the search process. So if you're wondering what happens during transition, how do we call our next minister, what is an inside candidate, I invite you to join this meeting at 12 noon. I can't think of a better place to be. So friends, as I give the benediction, as we enter into this time of transition and change, there would be some excitement and even some anxiety. So during these times, may we be patient and kind. May we have courage and keep the faith. May we have deep compassion and abounding love for each other. Go now in joy, go now in faith, go now in peace.